This is exciting. I could do this in my house. Do I get paid for this?
Hey, I'm Josh. This is the In Your Corner podcast from CBS News Philadelphia, where we are all about helping you find solutions to better manage and protect your money, spot the latest scams, and just know your rights as a consumer. And arguably, few people know that better than our guest here this week. After 22 years with CBS News Philadelphia, he has announced he's getting off the TV news roller coaster and retiring at the end of the year, capping off what will be a nearly 40-year career in journalism, which he says he's only 42, so I don't know how that math works out. Before In Your Corner, Jim Donovan was on your side.
This is impressive. I'm reconsidering retirement. I mean, if I could get a studio operation, I mean, you've got makeup and hair people here and a live audience here.
He lies. It is a shoestring
This is
operation here.
Impressive, Joshua.
If only you'd seen the first 20 minutes of his trying to get everything working. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, though.
My
Seriously.
pleasure,
And
my
congratulations.
Thank you.
On retirement.
Looking forward to it. I am leaving with a career fulfilled, smile on my face, and just looking forward to do something else.
Well, look, and I've said this to you too, considering, frankly, where the industry is at right now, you said you're leaving on your own terms, which I feel like is more than anyone with a career like yours could ask for.
I'm really fortunate. And to be honest with you, you know what it is? I've tried to normalize the schedule that I have. And when you're
Which is not normal.
No, when you're a morning news anchor, I mean, I go to bed at 6 o'clock at night and I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And no matter how you try to convince yourself that that's normal, it's not normal.
It's not.
So there got to be, 10 years on the anchor desk, another 12 doing the on your side consumer stuff. And I just thought, okay, now's the time to make a nice exit on my own terms, do something else. Every time I read a story about lack of sleep, reducing your life by 3 years, I'm like, Janelle, it's you and I. They're killing us here.
Well, I've been here only a year now, which is like a blip on the radar. But one of the first times I met you, I think you told me about your countdown to retirement.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
I got a Post-it note.
Tell people, yeah.
Post-it note. So in 2008, September, I think 28th, 29th, when the stock market was crashing during the Great Recession, I had my head down on my desk and I was groaning as I was watching all the money go out of my 401k. And I thought, I need to have a date as opposed to just a general early retirement thing. So I wrote down January 5th, 2026. January is when my contracts were always up. In TV, we sign contracts. And then 2026, this is the year that I can get into my 401k without having to pay a 10% penalty to the IRS. It's all about the money here,
Spoken
Josh.
like a true consumer reporter. Yeah.
And I've had that literally on my desk since 2008, and each contract was closer and closer and closer. And just having that goal, wasn't sure if I'd reach that goal or to have to make some detours, like a roadmap, but it just having that there, it kept me focused as far as saving money and just watching what I'm doing with my money.
Give you something to work toward,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of one of the pieces of advice that we often give people. And your career, you've been on the anchor desk now here for 10
years.
10 years. But the majority of your career, you were a consumer investigative reporter. Did you kind of naturally just find yourself like, you do have a good temperament for this kind of reporting? Why consumer reporting? How'd you wind up?
So I was working at a TV station in North Jersey, WWOR. They don't do news anymore up there. But I was the weekend field producer. So they would send me to crime scenes and fires and murders and stuff. And after several stories where it was just like brutal stuff that I was dealing with, I realized mentally that wasn't good for me. And I went into the boss and I said, I need to do something else. And I'm not big on sports. I thought, okay, I'm not going to join the sports department. I'm a hypochondriac, so I didn't want to go to help the health reporter. So at the time, the consumer reporter, the producer that produced that segment, was going out on maternity leave. So I thought, well, I can answer viewer mail. And that's what got me in the door at WOR. And then I went over to NBC in New York, doing research for consumer long-form stories, and then produced pieces for the Today Show, and then moved around. I was in North Carolina for 3 years as a consumer investigative reporter, Columbus, Ohio for a few years as a consumer reporter, and then started the Three on Your Side consumer unit here.
And you were national too, weren't you? CNBC?
Yep, CNBC, Steals and Deals. Yes, and that goes to show you, it was a half an hour nightly show, and to fill that with consumer news you can find a consumer angle in any story.
And that's personally why I love this type of reporting. Anything is a consumer story.
Exactly.
There's so many options. And what's fascinating even about you too is you haven't been doing it daily for a while now, but you still get emails. You still are responding to people. People still ask me about you, and can you or I meet people now, Jim. I'm doing stories now with people who say, Jim helped me on an
Isn't
issue
it
10 years
crazy?
ago. I mean, but you've had that, you've left that kind of impression, and you've had that kind of impact too.
Well, when we started the Three on Your Side franchise here years ago, was in 2004. I said, look, we have to respond to everyone. It's not Three on Your Side if we put you on TV. So, and I had a team. We had a large team. We had a producer and we had an assistant to help me. So, I mean, I got back to everyone. And, there's what I have said since I've joined the anchor desk is a lot of times people would call me and say, you know what, just call them and tell them you spoke with me. And I guess because of my body of work here for 12, 13 years, people were so afraid I was going to show up at their business that the bad people would do the right thing just to get them off their back.
Your reputation
It
precedes
really was
you.
good. It was like Mike Wallace. I'm coming after them.
Well, you have been known to hide in a bush or two, right?
Yes. And then that got a little old. When you're in your 20s, that's fine, waiting to jump out at the contractor. But 45, I was like, okay, my knees can't be in this. Or then you're sitting stakeouts. We would do stakeouts for 6, 8, 10 hours, and you just have to sit there. You can't go use the restroom. You don't want to drink anything. You're just kind of sitting there waiting for a person to come out of the door or drive up to a building.
Because at that point, you were trying to get a response. They wouldn't get back to you. That was the only way.
We needed that video. I don't know how many times I would be sitting in a car with a photographer and going, please show up. I just got to get out of here.
Well, and I feel like if only people knew sometimes, they see what's on TV, but kind of how the sausage is made and how much, frankly, doesn't get on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Or how much time is spent. So, I mean, in your case, we get tons of emails every day from people. And to your credit, to try to respond to each one, but that is not a small feat.
No, it was crazy. And what we would look at is, okay, is there a new angle to this story that would make it more television worthy? And or something would pop up. I mean, for the most part, I knew every scam that was out there, and then some of it was just fun. I mean, we would do a lot of hidden camera investigations. Where I'm hooked up to cameras and microphones and
that's one of my
crazy
favorite
stuff.
stories of yours is the hidden camera. I think it was a dance studio that was scamming people, and didn't the equipment
Oh, the modeling agency.
overheat? Oh, the modeling agency.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that
I was going to
story?
be a model. GQ, I'm sure. So there was this modeling agency that was taking money from people in advance and saying, we can represent you, yada, yada, yada. So it ended up, I went, and fortunately this guy, I guess, didn't watch TV because I show up, and I've got a hidden camera all hooked up. And hidden cameras back 10, 15 years ago were notoriously, one wrong move and the microphone would pop off or something. And as I'm sitting there, and I should point out, never did I ever lie. You don't lie. You can deflect.
Right.
Like if someone asks you a question, you deflect
You
things.
can't misrepresent
Yeah, you
yourself.
can't misrepresent.
Though. Yeah.
So I said, I'm interested in modeling, which, in my
Sure,
back
Jim.
of my head, this is
Well,
something
look at your hair. Come on.
Exactly. I could do hair commercials. So I'm sitting there, and as I'm talking to this man interviewing for this job as a model, I smelled a whiff of smoke, and the camera had started to short circuit. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh no, this is not. And unfortunately, he was a little farther away than you, and there was a desk in the middle of us. And I thought, I got to get out of here. So on the way there, I had stopped at Taco Bell, and I had gotten a chalupa. And so I said to the man, oh, I had Mexican for lunch. Is there a restroom around here? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. I said, can we reschedule this? So I jump up. I go run into this restroom down the hallway of this building. The thing had burnt a hole in my T-shirt. And I'm like, trying to put the thing out. But at this point, I'm thinking, all right, I've at least got what I needed him to say on camera. So I go back to the station. We have to transcribe the story, put the thing together. And things like that go through our legal department just to make sure everything's accurate. And the attorneys for the company said, yep, great story. He has one question. He goes, do you have a receipt from lunch? I said, what do you mean a receipt from lunch? He goes, you told him you had Mexican for lunch. If he ever comes after us, people can sue you for any reasons. Fortunately, that never happened to me my whole career, so I was very fortunate. He said, we need to have proof. And I thought, I don't have the receipt. This is 3 or 4 days after the thing. And I remember getting in my car to go home that night and thinking, I did all this and now I'm going to have to reschedule this. How the heck is this going to work? And I'm sitting at a traffic light and I went to go get some change that was in my little side of my door. And there was the receipt from Taco Bell.
Get out.
I'm like, yes, yes. So we got it on the air. The business closed up. But it was like, so you're always thinking about the story. I need to find, get them to say what, they're telling the pitch to everybody
Right.
else. But yeah, that was the,
Right.
those cameras constantly were, short circuiting, or you'd have the audio, but you wouldn't have the video.
Yeah.
Or then you'd have people, you'd be trying to walk up to them, speak to the lens in the middle of my eyes.
Act natural.
Yeah, exactly. Reading a restaurant menu where it's like literally like this. I mean, we look like crazy
But yeah,
people.
they're like, what's wrong with
Yeah.
you?
One time I was in a department store. We were showing how they put new prices up on top of older prices that were lower, the lower prices. And security is walking around me because I could hear the woman's walkie-talkies going on.
Oh, they're
and
like circling
Hi, how
you.
are you? And if you do that, that kind of throws them off a little bit. So yeah, lots.
But they
of
were
intel.
tailing you around the store
Yeah,
as you're
because,
trying to
because
get.
I'm sure they were looking at me on security video going, why is that guy like
Peeling.
looking, trying to see the things? Because they had put new price tags on them.
Little did they know that's kind of how Jim just operates
I
in the
know.
store. It's very normal at
Look
this
at
point.
this deal. Look at this deal. And the explanation that the store gave later on was ridiculous. But yeah.
So you clearly, though, I mean, you find this type of work rewarding. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have done it
It
this
was
long.
it was fun. We got results, and it was interesting. Other than general assignment news, that didn't really appeal to me. This I started getting into. I'm thinking, wow, this is fun. Because we did undercover investigations in hospitals for security. We did the modeling scams. We did dating services. That was another good one where I got invitations. An anchor at the station and I both got invitations to join a dating service. And she brought it in one day. She goes, look at this. And I think it was linked to our credit cards because I thought, why would we both get these things? And I'm looking, they had cards. This is before the internet. They had cards with people like women in bikinis and guys looking really buff. And I'm thinking, something's not right with this. And I looked closer. I said, there's palm trees in all these pictures. We're in New Jersey. This doesn't make sense. So I called around to modeling agencies in South Florida. They were all models. They were all their models that they had hired out.
Oh.
So we tracked down the models, and we actually had them come out of the picture. Like, we had them dressed the same
Really?
way. And there was one woman, she was gorgeous. And I turned around and I said, are you looking for a date through this service? And she goes, does it look like I need a date? That was a good one, too. They closed up. That business closed up.
But do you ever? I imagine you think a lot about in terms of the impact that you've had. And again, people still come up to me and say, Jim helped me out 10, 15 years
I love
ago.
hearing that.
Well, there's something to be said about, especially with this job. Oftentimes, you feel like you're screaming into a black void, and this to me feels like you are having a direct impact on the viewers. You are providing a service, and I mean, you've helped people. You've saved their homes. You've helped them.
During the recession, we did a whole series about how to work with your mortgage companies. And I mean, I was on speed dial with all the large banks across the country saying, I've looked at their loans. This shouldn't have been approved. Why did you approve this? And then suddenly they'd get a call. We had one family that I interviewed, and as I'm interviewing them, they didn't understand how to spend money. And as I'm interviewing, UPS comes into the house with a box. The wife brings a box in. I said, what's in the box? I have no boundaries. And she goes, oh, nothing. I said, no, open the box while we're here. So she opens the box. And mind you, they're about to lose their house. Their mortgage was, I think, $2,400 a month. And her husband was the sole income person. And his take home was $2,200 a month.
Well, that's the math. Not
It
math
doesn't
on
make
that.
sense.
No.
But somehow this bank, approved the loan. So she opens up this thing, and it's a little fairy godmother statue figurine. And I looked at the couple. I said, a fairy godmother is not going to come here and go, poof, your debt's all gone. And that was, they said,
Was that the light
that
bulb
went off.
moment?
Yeah, and they were able to deal with the bank. They were able to change things up, and now they're fine, financially fine.
Really?
Yeah. But
Wow.
and then she opened up she was doing some laundry because we were right off the kitchen. She had this Mercedes of a washer and dryer. I said, you don't need that. You just need something to wash your clothes. And years later, I saw the couple in the store and they started laughing. They said, boy, you were like a bully with us. I said, well, someone needed to snap you out of it.
Well, and look, to your credit, you practice what you preach.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this man will drive across state lines to get an item so he doesn't have to pay the taxes or something.
I've got a 15-year-old car. I mean, I drive a 15-year-old SUV because it has wheels and it moves me from place to place. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean I don't splurge. I go every day to get my coffee and stuff
Well,
like
you've
that.
taken some incredible
And
trips.
amazing trips. But I think it's a priority and then planning for the future. And fortunately, I've been able to plan so that now I can jump off in retirement and don't have to count my pennies the way I would normally.
I think what's been some of the most eye-opening for me in taking on this kind of reporting full-time is you do realize what I think is how I normally operate or how you normally operate with money. Many people don't. And many people just don't have sort of the basic financial literacy. And it for me, that's become like a goal is how can I teach people?
Yeah.
How can this be kind of a learning moment to empower them?
Were
'Cause
your parents that way? Were they financially
So,
like taught you about so we had
I was very
conversations
fortunate.
all the time.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I mean, we would talk at the dinner table about this kind of stuff. I grew up in the Detroit area during the Great Recession. You know, my dad was connected to the auto industry. That was a real formative moment in my life, and I remember those discussions. And so, for me, it's always been a natural kind of train of thought. I mean, I have an Excel spreadsheet that I put my expenses and budget into each month, which is not what most people probably do. But to me, it makes sense, and I also know the empowerment that comes from that. And I only wish that more people knew that
Well,
or
I think
could
it
learn
needs to
that.
start at a young age. I think there's a taboo about talking about money, especially with kids.
Oh, absolutely.
My mom in the old days where you'd write checks out for bills, I would check the checkbook afterwards. And she would intentionally make mistakes to see if I would catch it.
Really?
And I remember one time there was 2 cents missing from something. I said, well, here it is. I found this is 2 cents, but it's only 2 cents. And she said, 2 cents turns into 4 cents, which turns into $4, which turns into $40. I was like, oh, okay, I now understand this. But I had great role models. And I think also, you know, unfortunately, our school system is lacking. There should be some sort of at least basic financial kind of courses so that people know that your debit card is not the magic box where money just shoots out of it. Because, I mean, you know, I had my first credit card before my parents had one.
Yes, I remember you telling me about
it was
this,
really,
which is
my mother was like, oh, you better watch out for those things. Those could be dangerous. Now, mind you, it only had like $100 limit. I got it in college. And then slowly it went up, but it taught me good budgeting skills. And I mean, not that I've done everything right. Years ago, I worked at Macy's in the women's shoe department. I highly suggest not to do that. That's like a nightmare of a department, or people's feet. So, but anyway, you get discounts. You'd get discounts on clothes stuff. Well, I had this huge bill at the end, and finally I'm like, I got to get out of this because I just kept buying things because it was on sale and marked down. I ended up having like 90 sweaters. And I remember watching Oprah one day on about shopaholics. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm becoming one of those people.
You've got a problem.
Snapped me out of that, paid off the bill. And, you know, but it's those little things that sometimes you make a mistake and you're thinking, ooh, I'm glad I learned that earlier than later on in life.
Well, and luckily, too, in Pennsylvania, it's going to be a graduation requirement to take a financial
Which
literacy
is
course in
amazing.
high school.
I'm like so thrilled with that.
Yeah, and when you talk, I've talked to these students, they go, this is a class I want to take.
Yeah.
They want to know this kind of stuff. So, you know, I feel like part of your job is you are a teacher, too. As much as you're a reporter, you're a teacher. Is there any story in your illustrious career? Is there one that stands out to you that was like career defining or career changing? I know it's hard to, everything's kind of a blur after a while, probably. I know one story that comes to mind that
Okay.
you've told me.
Which one was it?
Exactly.
Here, 39 years. It's
You were investigating a mechanical issue with automobiles. You had a trend had started where viewers were talking about it would go into reverse.
reverse. You'd park the car. It was a particular model of an SUV.
Yeah.
And this woman called me one day and she said, I was just run over by my SUV. I don't want to name that manufacturer because it's been years. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I put it in park. I got out of the car to go to a Blockbuster to drop it off, the old-fashioned VHS tapes. And she said, I turned around and the car was moving in reverse with my baby in the back seat and a child seat. And I said, I said, and you're alive? It literally ran her over. And we were able to get the security video from the Blockbuster. And her clothes had tread marks, went straight. I said, how you survived this? So she jumps in the car, and as the door is open and it's rolling back, she's trying to stop the car. She gets knocked over by the door and runs over. So anyway, we start looking into this, and we find out that this has happened before, that the car goes from park into reverse. Several people have been killed. And I had gone into my boss and I said, listen, this is a big story. And we found an engineer that said exactly what the problem was. And, when you're dealing with auto manufacturers, they got a lot of money and a lot of attorneys. So we put together the story. And for several weeks, I was calling them, look, we need information on this. This is what we're being told. We have, there are deaths that have been attributed to this. And I remember right before I went on TV, I called their PR people one final time. I said, this is it. I need a comment from you. And the woman said, if you put this on television, we will own your television station. And I was like, okay. So I went to the boss. I told him what she said. And he goes, are you sure? I said, I'm 99.9%. I said, there may be some sliver that I'm missing, but I can't find it. And he's like, okay, let's go with it. So that night, before I went on the air, I went to the restroom, got a little sick. I thought, okay, it's either I'm going to have a job tomorrow
now or
not.
never, yeah.
Did the story. The next morning, I walked into the newsroom, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and as people were applauding, and I'm thinking, what are they applauding at? And I realized for me, that morning, that manufacturer had recalled several 100,000 vehicles for the problem that I described in the 11 o'clock news the night before.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So they were sitting on this. They knew it was, an, issue,
it was an issue.
and it just took you to
Yeah.
put it out there.
And a lot of TV stations won't touch car stories because, obviously car manufacturers, they advertise. And then a few months later, we had another thing with defective seatbelts. They were called like Gen 2 or Gen 3 seatbelts where that little orange part stuck up a little too much. And if you were in an accident, you could accidentally hit it and it would disengage the seatbelt.
Just defeated the
And
purpose.
I went into my boss of the station at the time, wasn't here, in a different city. And I said, there's this problem. And he looked at me, he said, you're killing me. What do you just keep going after car stories? And he said, let's hold off until we get more information. I said, your wife has that vehicle. And then he agreed to do the story. And the only reason why we were able to prove that it was true was there was a man driving home on Thanksgiving morning. He went to a store to get some extra pan for his wife. He was in a car crash. He died in the car crash. And the wife kept saying he is a freak as far as safety. He would never be in that car without the seatbelt on. Well, what happened was during the trial, they realized that he had been wearing the seatbelt. When the crash happened, he hit the thing and it disengaged. And the only reason why they knew that, there was a can of paint inside the vehicle. So when the crash happened, the paint sprayed, and it sprayed. The only way it could have gotten on the seatbelt was because he was wearing the seatbelt. The spray pattern.
Get out.
Yeah. And they recalled that was another several 100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I always say if a company or a manufacturer, whatever, is ever telling you this isn't a story or don't you dare do this story, chances are it's a story.
Yeah, and that's even municipal. Years ago, we did a story about Philadelphia was not checking its parking meters.
Parking meter story.
Yeah. And I called, and I have no problem. Tell me I'm wrong. I have no problems with that. And we had tested, so there were 20-something thousand of the old coin-operated meters, and they weren't being tested for timing. And you have to do that. It's a timing device, kind of like a scale in a supermarket. If you're not testing it, you can't ticket me. So we ended up looking at all the records. We found only a small number, like less than 10% in the city were being inspected as they're supposed to. So I called the folks that were in charge, and I said, I'm going on TV and telling people not to pay their parking tickets. And I was on a conference call with a whole bunch of bigwigs for the city. I said, so tell me I'm wrong. And it's crickets. You could hear nothing. I said, listen, this is the chance. This is like toothpaste. Once this goes on TV, and we end up sticking it on television because I was right.
You were right.
Yeah, I was right.
You have this sort of, I love about you too. It's very clear. It's like the difference between right and wrong, right?
It's very clear.
It's very clear, but that's also, I feel like, is that just a product of your like Irish Catholic upbringing too,
is.
right? Like
I was raised by a Marine. Yes, there's rules,
right? And
rules, Josh.
You were in Catholic school. You dealt with nuns.
Oh yeah.
And I read a profile from you from like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where you told off the priest who accused you of cheating.
So listen, because this ticked me off. I was out sick one day in all of high school. That's it. Because I was in this computer class. why I was doing a computer class, I don't know. But this priest was the teacher, and I knew I was going to fail this test. And I told my mom, I'm going to fail this test. I need to call in sick. And she was like, we're not paying tuition for you to call in sick. And I said, Mom, I'm going to, fail this. She goes, all right, the one time. And I'd never asked for that. I wasn't one of these kids that skipped school. She said, no television. You need to focus on this test. So I sat there and at home that day, and I tried to learn as much as I could. I didn't understand any of it. Well, the next morning I go into class, and he's giving back the test that he gave the day before. And he goes over it. So I write everything down, thinking maybe something similar is going to be on this makeup later this afternoon. So I go take the makeup. He gives me the same test. Well, I don't have much retention up here, but I can retain information for another 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. So answered the thing, handed it in. The next morning, I get into class. He's like, James, please come up to the front of the class. Please apologize to the class for cheating. And I said, well, I didn't cheat. And he said, well, yes, you did. You're not smart enough to get 100. And I said, well, that's kind of true, but I didn't cheat. And he said, well, apologize and sit down. I said, nope, I'm going to the principal's office. And I went to the principal's office, and I said, he just accused me of cheating. I need you to call my parents. They're paying tuition for me to go to school here, and that's just not right. And the principal grabbed me by the back of the neck, slams me in a chair. He goes, what do you want? I said, either my parents get called or he apologizes in front of all of his classes for wrongly accusing someone of cheating. And he made him do that. The bad thing about it was I later found out in the semester he was in charge of our new TV station at the school, and I was applying to it. And then, he put me in some background role. He said I would never be good on television.
This was the same guy who you mailed a picture of your first Emmy to?
I've got.
10
years after getting out of college, and I had an Emmy, and I sent him a note, and I said, you couldn't spot talent back in the 80s, and you still probably can't spot talent. I remember the people that have wronged me.
Only Jim Donovan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Look, hardest working journalist that I've ever met. You're constantly taking calls, emails, working after hours.
I always tell people when you get to Philadelphia, people think when you get to a large market, because Philadelphia is market 5, it's a huge in television business. And I always tell them you have to work harder to stay here. The easy part was getting up to this level, but you just, and that was the thing. I always looked at this as a career and avocation, not just a job.
Well, and there's something I picked up very quickly in Philadelphia is there's a the sense of community here. You feel like you don't want to let people down either. People have each other's backs, and if you're in a position to help, you want to help.
It was weird when I came here. I didn't know that much about Philadelphia. I was raised in New York, and I was living in Ohio at the time before I came here. But this town embraced me. I figured I'd only be here for 2 or 3 years, like most people. You just plan short term. And within days, I thought, boy, these people watch television. They knew all the people in the TV market and also the sports people. And they'll tell you what they think.
Well, they do.
They'll yell at you out a SEPTA window, hey, TV guy, and I'll be like, okay.
I've got a story for you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But it's unlike any news town I've ever worked
amazing.
in. The people here are great. And look, I'm not just blowing smoke. I mean, you have set the standard here at this station in this market for consumer investigative reporting. When I was asked if I could come here and do this, and like, you want me to do consumer reporting where Jim Donovan does, tough
Thank
act
you,
to
young
follow.
Josh. I appreciate that.
And the first time that you said to me, hey, your stuff is pretty good, that was like it meant a lot.
You're the next round.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying.
But the thing is too, we need this. We need you. We need you to carry this on, because otherwise, what's the work that I did for years and the people before me? I mean, consumer information, that's news you can use. Yes, people should have a varied diet as far as what they know about, national news, international news, but this is the stuff that impacts them. And there are things that, I've been out of that realm for a little while, but then watching them, I didn't know that. And then we discuss things. You're the most interesting person in this newsroom, because I come over to you, hey, what was that? Let's talk about that.
I tell you what, though, that's a tough feat to bring something new to Jim that he hasn't heard before, because you literally have heard it all.
Yeah,
and I did a story a few months ago, and it was literally like the story that you had done 10 years prior about Social Security declared someone dead. It's like, this is still an issue. And it was
But it goes, the problem, and I think it's a lot different. When I was doing the consumer stuff, we didn't have podcasts. we didn't have social media. So the thing is, it would go out on the 6 o'clock or the 11 o'clock news, and poof, that's the end of it.
That's the end,
It
yeah.
may get onto our website. Questionable. Now, I mean, so there's all these ways to get the words out. The problem is you're also dealing with more scams that way, and people getting misinformation from their social media feed that because of the algorithm, garbage in, garbage out. So, but yeah, I mean, I just think people need to, pause, stop before making decisions. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and just because, I mean, some of this stuff is sophisticated. Even I'll be like, wait a minute here. I don't understand
It's
this.
getting better,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
AI is only making it worse. Are you still going to do your Bookface classes?
Bookface, yes. So they've never paid tuition. These people, I mean, they've been in
Freeloaders,
this
all of them.
class. Yeah, it's an honors class. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't rent me the space for free, But we've been
You couldn't put a price on this curriculum.
No,
though.
no. So for those of the folks that are listening that aren't aware, so on Facebook, I have this thing called Bookface class. My mom, my dearly departed mom, she called it Bookface one day, so that's what we started with.
perfect.
And it really took off during COVID. There was at one point where I realized we have so many people that were shut in and trapped, and they just needed some kind of engagement. And at one point during COVID, we were getting like 100,000 views a day. I'm like, who are these people? And everybody has a name, Tupperware Liz, I mean, Tupperware Liz, we've got, and they've created their own little community there. But I mean, I'm going to continue to do the Bookface, not every day of the week. I'll probably scale down a little bit. And I don't know what it will focus on yet. I've told them, let's just go along for the ride. Those are my people. I say we're all the land of misfit toys. I said, how did I get with these people? But they're so funny and they're so endearing. And, they've embraced me and they've made this a much more richer career. Because before, you'd hear people's comments in the streets or they talk to you. Now it's like I get messages from them and gifts, socks. You
So
see
many
the
socks.
I mean, I'm at 1,500 pairs of socks. It's like, and I finally had to say, I'm retiring. Stop with the socks. So we're trying to get Guinness to certify it. It's a world record. So the current world record, I think, is like 1,100 and something. So I've got I've got plenty. I've got 1,505, I think I told our producer. So
When's the last time you went through and counted all? Do you have
the
like
other
a
day. The
really?
other day, yeah. Because I've got them in containers. I have a sock closet. Don't you have a sock closet?
Naturally.
Yeah, so I have them in containers labeled food and beverages and holidays. And
By the design, you
yeah.
categorize them?
Yeah, because if I need something that has cans of baked beans, I go to the food socks and I will find a can of baked beans on socks.
None of this should surprise anybody
no,
who's
no.
listening.
Uh-huh.
And who gets custody of the Eagles jacket?
Oh, that's coming with me.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I thought we might put it in a shrine here
No,
somewhere
it
behind
really
glass,
should.
maybe.
I
Or
have the Eagles jacket. I've got the Phillies outfit too, and then I've also have Phillies overalls and Eagles overalls. I've got more costumes. Costumes made the morning show for a while there. I had top hats and cowboy hats, and because the producer, our executive producer at the time, Steve Lindsay, would always say, "How about this?" Because he knew I like good television. Entertain the folks.
Keep
When
them
they
coming
wake
back.
up in the morning, you want to start your day with a smile. So if you're going to see me in some crazy outfit, there was one time, was it Pizza Hut? Pizza Hut or Domino's sent a jacket that you can put slices of pizza inside,
keep 'em warm?
inside the pockets. That was.
Do you still have that?
No, I don't know what happened. I think we had to send that one back. But yeah.
When you're getting up at 2 a.m., you've got to keep
It's
it interesting
true.
somehow, right?
I mean, candy, ice cream, whatever. We used to make pancakes when it was blizzards. I'd be making pancakes in the middle of the show. Waffles and pancakes. They take a shot of me, and I walk over, put my apron on during the commercial break.
I know you're going to enjoy the extra sleep.
I will.
But we're going to miss you.
Follow me on
And-
social. I'll be around. And again, I'm retiring from broadcasting.
Yeah.
I'm going to do
You're
other
not
things.
dying.
No,
We'll still-
this is the next is the third. For years I was a flight attendant before I got into
That's
TV
right.
full time.
That's right.
I was probably the person that stowed your parents' luggage on a vacation. Say, "Oh, let me take that for you." No, I didn't touch luggage.
You did.
I could throw my
Oh,
back
you wouldn't.
out.
Oh, no heavy
I'm-
lifting.
No. If you were an old, frail person, then I would help you. But if you were able-bodied, I'd be like, "You
Forget it.
packed it." But I did that for a number of years while I was in television part-time in the beginning, trying to get my foot in the door. So that was one career. This is the big bulk. 39 in television, and then there'll be something else.
Your third act.
Third act.
All right.
It's gonna be a good one. I don't know what it is, but it's gonna be a good one.
He says that. I'm sure he's got it all planned
Oh
out.
yes.
He's got it all planned, just like the Post-it.
Just like the Post-it note.
Well, Jim, thanks for coming on. Congratulations.
Thank you, young Josh.
And and also there are two Joshes here.
So this is
Thank God I
you're
got the young Josh moniker.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the other Josh feels. We don't call him old Josh,
No,
but
no.
it's maybe implied. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. It's not a problem. I'm not worried about this. I won't be around.
It's not your issue. Truly a privilege.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jim.